Thanksgiving dinner. It's a time for family, gratitude, and chaos in the kitchen. Don't worry, the superhero Thanksgiving hotline is here to save the day. Burn the turkey? Call Thor. He's great at roasting with lightning precision. Need to carve it? Wolverine's got you covered, though you might want to keep an eye on the tablecloth. Out of rolls? No problem. The Flash can grab fresh ones in the blink of an eye. Just don't ask where he got them. So this Thanksgiving, don't stress, let the heroes handle it. Because when things get tough, even your kitchen deserves an origin story. And happy Thanksgiving from Moving Panels. We hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to this Moving Panels One Shot. Let's have a nerdy little conversation. And today, since last week we talked about Persepolis, I thought it would be a good time to discuss when real-world events actually affect comics. And for this discussion, I brought back my lovely wife, Bethany. How are you, Bethany?
I'm great. This podcast is based on and inspired by a true story.
So, I mean, comics have always been influenced by the culture, by the society. They've captured historical events. They've moved along with societal shifts.
Yeah.
I mean, the X-Men, of course, famously, coming into existence around the same time as, Martin Luther King and the movement for race rights. And so after talking about Persepolis last week, which is centered around the author Marjane Satrapi, forgot her last name for a minute there, her growing up during the Iranian Revolution, I think that this is a good time to talk about three others. So they haven't turned into movies yet, but three other comics that you and I have come to know, not necessarily read all of, but kind of introduce other people to. But before we get into that, Bethany, what do you think makes a comic that deals with real-world events so important and impactful?
I feel like it's just like a novel in the sense of a well-written novel based on something true. It exposes you to a perspective that you wouldn't have previously considered. Especially in a graphic novel with the images that are relayed, you get kind of the heart of something that maybe you would have never experienced before. You can see yourself in a story that seems distant from you, and I feel like it helps promote empathy to people that you may have never considered previously.
Yeah. Because again, going back to Persepolis, there was so much about Persepolis, like I would have not realized. I mean, honestly, I didn't know a lot of that historical event. So, even just being aware of things. But we're going to talk about three of graphic novels that are based off of real events, historical events. They Call Us Enemy, Mouse, which most of you probably have heard of, and March. So let's start off talking about They Called Us Enemy. So They Called Us Enemy is George Takei from Star Trek. It's his memoir told as a graphic novel. It was co-written with Justin Eisinger, Stephen Scott, and illustrated by Harmony Becker. It tells the story of Takei's childhood experience in Japanese-American internment camps that existed during World War II. It's a personal and heartbreaking narrative that sheds light on an often overlooked chapter of American history. I have to be honest, I am 43 years old, and I did not know these Japanese-American internment camps existed until we did When the Wind Blows.
Now, I did know about that. I feel like by the time I was coming in through history class, like stuff like that was getting mentioned because it was harder to hide it with the internet. However, it was always posed as like, yes, America did have internment camps or concentration camps for Japanese Americans during World War II, but it wasn't nearly as bad as, and it was always posed as like, it wasn't nearly as bad as the Jewish concentration camps that the Germans and the Nazis had. So that was usually the only information we got was that yes, they existed, but they weren't that bad. Yeah. But I mean, any instance where you're taken out of your home, especially because a lot of these people were American citizens.
Yeah.
They just were of Japanese descent. Yeah. And they were removed from their homes. A lot of them never got their homes back and lost their, jobs, their businesses, and were sent away to live in a camp just for being of a different race.
Yeah. And very similar to Persepolis, George Takei doesn't just discuss living in the camps. He discusses his family. Mm-hmm. He portrays his parents with strength and dignity, the way that as a family they navigated through the unimaginable circumstances, and even how he is aware as an adult how much his family, his parents, try to protect him from the reality of their situation.
Which is such a relatable thing. If something awful is happening, obviously we have never experienced something to that extent, but anytime something scary or something we're worried about, we try to shield our children from it. That's just kind of, I think, a parent's natural instinct is to protect their child from something, because you don't want your child to be scared. You don't want your child to worry. And kind of seeing that played out, and it makes it garners empathy, it garners sympathy. You put yourself in those people's shoes, and how would you react?
Yeah.
In those situations.
Yeah. And George Takei gets into the impact that systemic racism has, wartime hysteria. I mean, the closest we've experienced was probably 9/11. That systemic racism that occurs when you put everybody from an entire race into one big package, I guess you say. I can't think of a better word. And it doesn't matter what type of people they were. You're seeing a skin color.
Right.
And that's all that matters.
Or a religious practice. And all of a sudden those people have been demonized based on a horrible event that did happen. But now these innocent people are being demonized.
Yeah. But of course, George Takei came out stronger, better. Again, went on to become the iconic Sulu on the classic Star Trek, and of course many people know the name even to this day.
Right.
If not, they know of him appearing in things saying, "Oh my."
Oh my.
Yeah. So, but yeah, in the comic he gives a very effective way to give the readers, showing them how resilience and hope can emerge even in the face of injustice.
Yes.
All right, let's get into one of the more popular of the historical graphic novels, and that is Mouse by Arch Spiegelman.
I feel like this became super popular a few years ago because it was one of those books that was very publicly people were publicly trying to ban it. Yeah. And there was a lot of uprising or outcry about that, because it is basically just an illustration of, Nazi concentration camps and the Jewish persecution during World War II.
Yeah, so very similar to the way like novels like Animal Farm and then Watership Down have kind of played with stories and portraying real events. This one, I mean, it's not just animals on a farm, or it's not just bunnies out in the field. Like these characters, these are mice playing. Yeah. The Jews are the mice,
right?
And then I'm going to say it for the sake of the discussion, the Nazis are actually cats. and the Polish people are pigs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's how it's. But little did I know that this isn't just Art Spiegelman telling this story, but the story is actually about his father,
right?
Vladek, who was a Holocaust survivor. And I think the choice of him using animals, yeah, it might seem a little weird, but
I feel like it doesn't soften it, but it makes it more approachable.
Yeah, it allows you to process
the
horror of the Holocaust. Yeah, it's a little bit more symbolic.
I feel like something. Obviously, they still tried to ban it because it was mice, but it makes it more approachable for a younger audience. That's like seeing humans go through that kind of suffering is really painful. Not that it's palatable with it being animals at all, but it feels like it's kind of more, it's one step away from yourself. And so you can approach it, acknowledge how inhumane the treatment was, acknowledge how scary and awful these actions were. And it's not vague or subtle at all. Like, it's clearly depicting what really happened. But I feel like it helps a younger audience wrap their brains around it a little better.
Yeah. It allows them, like I said, it allows them to process the events of the Holocaust a little bit better. And it's worth noting that Spiegelman puts in his own struggles, grappling with the weight of his father's trauma, the burden of telling this story authentically.
Right.
But I think just like with Persepolis and with They Call Us Enemy, it's not just about the historical account, but it's about that relationship, that father-son relationship.
Which again makes it real. Like,
yes.
Not that it's not real, but it makes it's not just these people, this mass of people experience this. It's this family that is not unlike your family or a family that you know had this happen to them. And I feel like that makes it more personal.
Oh, this is a deep episode.
Yeah.
All right, we're keeping this short. We're really just kind of introducing you to these three books. The third one is one that I discovered as we were going to talk about this, and that is a book called March, which is a trilogy of graphic novels written by late Congressman John Lewis and Andrew Aden, with art by Nate Powell. And now what it does is it chronicles Lewis's life and his right at the pivotal moments in the civil rights movement. I mean, it starts with the March over the bridge on, what was that called? Like Black Sunday, I think it was, or something like that. I can't remember. And even into Obama's inauguration. And I mean, it's another one of those. I think another thing we haven't talked about, we talked about with Persepolis, but is the way the artwork even helps draw you into these stories, the way it's done. I mean, Mouse even has this kind of very gritty, well, it's not so much gritty, but it's not
it's
clean,
rough.
Yeah, it's not a clean animation.
Which adds texture to the story. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, we've got the 1963 March on Washington. We've got Salem to Montgomery marches. And what makes March so special is how it conveys the relentlessness, the courage, the determination.
Yeah.
You know, all of that we've learned since that time of all of these different activists. You know, Martin Luther King, John Lewis, of course, Jesse Jackson, Hosea Williams, that were all part of this. And I think, like in the case of March, the way it's portrayed, it really helps you feel that tension that they felt. I mean, the opening of the graphic novel, like I said, is them coming across that bridge and the police, you know, telling them, you know, stop, go home now. And they're actually talking about, they're asking each other, like, I think it's John Williams and John Lewis and Hosea Williams talking to each other saying, "Can you swim?" because they're thinking they may have no
They
choice
get
but
thrown.
to jump.
Yeah.
To jump.
Yeah.
Off the bridge to avoid being killed.
Right.
And so that tension, the violence that they faced, but then, like I said, then it jumps straight into it's a couple pages of that, and then you have John Lewis waking up the morning that Barack Obama is getting inaugurated, and so you got that juxtaposition of a moment of hope, you know, this amazing moment that it although it was 40 something years later.
It was within his lifetime.
Yes, he got to experience that. And so...
Sorry, I'm getting emotional.
And so this set of graphic novels, and again, each one of them is a graphic novel. Persepolis was written in 2 parts, and then they put it together, and it's about novel size. Mouse is a thicker graphic novel. They call this Enemy. We don't know because we've only seen it digitally.
Right.
So we don't know what the physical copy looks like. But March, I got hold of the physical, and all 3 of them are pretty thick. So, you put all 3 of them together, it's like the size of a Stephen King book. Is how big that one is. But as Bethany's experiencing now, March is not just this great history lesson of the events that happened that John Lewis is portraying, but it's an emotional journey.
Yeah.
So what do you want to share with that?
I just I don't know. The story just I don't know it. I'm getting very emotional talking about it and thinking about it of just you say it's 40 years, but in like the grand scheme of things, the events of all of these novels didn't take place that long ago.
No.
And I mean, the people in it, a lot of them are still living who are telling the story and who are part of the story.
In fact, you're talking about roughly a 20-year gap between each.
Right.
From Mouse to, of course, Mouse and They Called Us Enemies
were kind of simultaneous.
Same time.
Yeah.
And then 20 years later, you've got March. And then 20 years after that, you got Persepolis.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it's just, I just need a second to kind of gather my feelings into words, but just kind of the idea that when things seem hopeless, they don't have to be. And that if you keep pushing forward and moving forward, and these stories, I feel like, depict that.
Yeah.
They depict what has happened during some of the worst moments of our history, especially our modern history. And just saying, this doesn't have to be it. This doesn't have to be where the story ends. We can grow on it. We can come out stronger and better. And if we as a society can come together with love and hope and empathy for those who are different from us, we can come through stronger and better for it.
Yeah. And I think that's, just to finish up talking about March, I think that's what John Lewis is trying to get across in March, is he wants you to feel inspired.
Yeah.
He wants you to see the bravery, the resilientness, all that they went through during the civil rights movement, and that, yes, there's still a struggle.
Yeah, there's still ways to go.
But again, by that juxtaposition of Barack Obama being elected president, is that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And yeah, and there you go. I think all of these, they show how comic books can do much more than just entertain us.
Yeah.
They're a way that we can be educated. We can be challenged in our own thoughts. And they can connect us. People talk about how a lot of us who read comics are, introverted, nerds and geeks, but comics like this allow us to be connected to the human experience.
Right.
And they remind us that history isn't just dates.
Mm-hmm.
History isn't just events. Like
it's people.
Yeah, like you're saying, it's personal. It's emotional. It's the things that shape us into who we are as a society. You know, not even just culturally, but as a whole society. What this has done.
Right.
Any last thoughts?
I'm thankful that you brought this. I have to admit I have not finished reading any of these. Some of them I haven't started yet, but they are definitely on my to be read list, and I think that's going to be I set like goals for reading every year, like how many books I want to read in a year. And then I try to set like mini goals within that of just like, so like this year I was trying to read books that I should have read in high school and didn't. Like next year I want to make sure to read more nonfiction graphic novels and get just kind of, I feel like it, especially because a lot of times they're told from people who have a personal connection to it. The story is powerful, and I'm excited.
I agree. Again, go out and find these. Give them a read.
They're pretty easy to find.
I think March was the most difficult one to find. I don't think I could find it I don't think I could find it electronically. Mm-hmm. Not that I, searched super long to find it digitally, but I found a copy on eBay of all three, the entire trilogy. Found a copy on eBay for a pretty decent price. You know what? There's always a chance they could possibly have these in your local library, so mm-hmm. I would check those out as well. And I do think, we talked about how Persepolis actually appears in my school's literature book,
right?
That I discovered that from a literature teacher. I think some of these could become great reads in both literature and even history classes,
right?
Depending on the topic. I mean, they may not be able to read through the whole thing, but at least discuss it and highlight certain parts. But we'll go ahead and wrap this up for this. Just wanted to introduce you to these comics that you may not have realized existed. Again, I didn't know about Persepolis until Bethany introduced it to me. We then came across They Called Us Enemy while we were doing When the Wind Blows, because that director was also a part of the Japanese American internment camps. Bethany had always had a interest in Mouse, mm-hmm. and we owned a copy of it. And then, like I said, doing the research, I found out about March, and I started reading it. I haven't finished because, like I said, altogether it's pretty thick. All three of them. So I haven't read through the whole thing, but it was a great read, what I've read so far, and I can't wait to finish it. But we'll go ahead and wrap things up for today for Moving Panels. I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.